How about them Seahawks? What a game. I mean, I knew they were going to win, right? It was so good. It was so exciting. Um, okay, well, that's my something good is the Seahawks winning. What else you guys got? Anybody have something good they want to share? Any new listings? Open house needs, wants, all the exciting things. You could unmute or throw it in the chat. We'd love to hear how things are going and hear all the good things. I see somebody raise their hand. Where'd they go? I lost him. Just go ahead and unmute. Was it Kristen?
Yes, I got called out. I didn't really mean to raise my hand, but the good
Ah,
news is I had a house in UP that went live last Thursday. We're under contract so far, 20,000 over, and I had 9 families through the open house.
that's amazing. I love
Yeah,
it.
makes me happy.
Yeah, of course. That's awesome. I
Yeah.
love it. Love hearing that. Um, Michael said where?
University Place, 63rd, off of 63rd.
I see
Price
somebody.
point 550.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
I see somebody in the chat said they had their first listing appointment coming up. That is so amazing. Um, Somebody else said they've been working on their limiting beliefs. That's always a positive. Christina, new luxury listing. That's great. Ooh, Ari, if you're on vacation, that is always a good thing. Um, Great. Well, I love it. Again, if you guys have anything that you guys want to add in the chat, open houses, needs, wants, all of that stuff. Kendra says new commercial listing just went live today. Something million, or is that just like millions? 2.4 million. There we go. Awesome. Well, that's so exciting. We are going to dive into announcements. We have some good stuff today for you guys. Stat graphics. I just saw the email. That is out. Be the market expert. Put this stuff all up on your social media so that all of your buyers and sellers, friends, family, everybody see what's going on in the counties that you represent and see that you are the expert. So check your email, they're in there. Family reunion is in Atlanta, February 21st. There's a QR code. You can get more information. It is not too late to get your ticket. Probably be a little pricey, but make it out, make it happen. Ignite is coming. It is starting in our Kirkland office March 2nd, and I believe Liz or somebody let me know that is in person only, right? I think
Yes,
it is.
it
Okay,
is in person only.
in person only. Register.
Yes.
Yeah, register today and scan that QR code for more information. This is a free class, you guys. And this is what kickstarted my career. I loved Ignite. Loved, loved, loved it. Still have my best friends from my Ignite group that I was in. So I love it. All right. Call the play, win the day. You guys, this is Jason Abrams' first time coming to the Pacific Northwest to teach a class. I'm pretty sure ever. So be in that room. It's from 9 to noon, Tuesday, March 31st. There's the QR code. You guys want to be in this room with him. You want to hear, he's going to be talking all about your business. This is where you want to be March 31st. So get your tickets today. I think today on our call, they said they had like 173 people already registered. So get your tickets. It's going to be a good one. Sydney, every morning, script practice. There's the QR code for that. You will want to scan that so you have the link information, but it's every morning at 8:30. Rising tides. This has been so much fun, you guys. Literally, we've been having a blast with such great topics, inspiration, diving into things for your business. We did a whole segment on AI. This is such a great time to dive in, chat with your peers, and learn some stuff for your business kicking off 2026. So join us. Tech Thursday with JC. I love seeing that she has all of the topics laid out. It's so amazing. JC is like the tech marketing social media guru, so don't miss these classes with her. And if there's topics that you want tell your leadership, we will make them happen. If you guys were on our call last month, you saw that we have updated all of this amazing stuff for you guys. We have this learning hub on YouTube with all of our new videos. If you miss a sales meeting, if you miss a contracts class, Tech Thursday, Rising Tides, it's all on there. We have it all in one place for you. Thank you, Haley. But it's awesome. The Learning Hub. So new videos are uploaded every single week. Scan the QR code. There it is. Our next Working Mom Collective Zoom is next Wednesday, 9:30 a.m. And then all of our prompts for you guys. So if you need prompts for ChatGPT, Gemini, anything that you're using, we have over 100. Scan the QR code and we update them every month for you. Again, always reach out to me if you're interested in any leadership opportunities. Call, text, email. All right. Who do we got on from Envoy?
Hey, Elena, it's JC. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for asking. I think I just sent you a request to be able to present. Do you got that? Awesome. Terrific.
You should be able to.
Excellent. Can you guys see my PowerPoint screen by any chance? Let's see here.
No, we just see your face. Lovely face. There we go. I see something coming in.
All right, terrific. I was one
There we
click away.
go.
Okay, awesome, terrific. Hi, everybody. Just want to get you guys the mortgage update of the week and essentially just getting right into it. And I'm sure that you guys have noticed, and kind of what I was hearing at the beginning of the call, we're all kind of noticing the market starting to pick up, right? We've definitely taken notice that the year has started out quite active year over year. So just want to address that, but also one of the most common questions that I've been getting so far this year is, okay, JC, we feel like we understand the market has improved, but now we need your help. We need your help figuring out what is going to be the best timing for us to move forward with our home purchase, right? So obviously that's going to be kind of a tricky situation. But even so, if you still have people that are kind of skeptical and kind of on the fence, not sure if right now is the best time to buy, just remind them rates have improved quite a bit. The average interest rate as of this morning still hovering right around 6%. So that's a big improvement of where it was a year or even 2 years ago, right? Also let them know we have more inventory. Inventory is on average 9% more than we did last year. And another piece of information you want to share with them is home prices. Home prices continue to go up, right? So once again, another reason why you would want to consider buying now instead of just hanging out in the sidelines while real estate just continues to appreciate modestly, but it's still appreciating, right? So I really do like that phrase that we put on this slide here: buy with leverage now, refinance later. And that kind of just sounds very similar to another slogan that we had in prior years where it said date the rate, marry the house. And I think it's kind of the same message, but I think this one's more impactful because leverage at the end of the day is what's going to set you up for success throughout this year. So I think that's a very important message to take back to our clients, right? Now, if we want to dig into some of the data, also, as you guys know, real estate works off of cycles, right? And historically, we can kind of tell when we've hit the bottom of those cycles. And we know that right now, 2026, we're going to be positioned for a very healthy purchase season and market. So right now, we are thinking that home prices and just home sales in general will be increasing throughout this year. And it makes a lot of sense. Rates have improved. We have more inventory. So therefore, home sales should be picking up throughout this year. So that's really important to share with our clients. And also, I think that this one right here is going to hit home for a lot of people. Historically, 65% of home appreciation happens in the first part of the year. That's going to be seen in the months of April, May, and June. So just remind your clients you can definitely wait to buy later down the year if you want to. But the data has shown us that historically, the folks that take advantage at the beginning of the year are really going to take advantage of that home appreciation, right? Because you can buy the same home perhaps in 6 months from now, but if it appreciates, you're just going to buy it at a higher price. And if you're betting on the fact that rates are going to come down and that that's going to make up for the home appreciation, it might not even be worth it because while rates are not guaranteed to go down, home prices, on the other hand, historically, we know that it's very likely that they will continue to go up, right? And just to kind of close it off, once again, if you have clients that need even a little bit more help trying to put all the pieces together to the puzzle, you can definitely leverage the Envoy buy before you sell calculator, where you can kind of put customized scenarios for your clients and show them what the cost of waiting could be and how sometimes that we believe that an interest rate a 0.5% or 1% lower is going to make all the difference in the world when in reality if that home continues to appreciate, a lower interest rate that they're hoping to get might not even be that worth waiting for, right? So yeah, guys, that is the latest that we have for you guys. Anybody have any questions? Anything you guys would like to ask? No? Alrighty, I will go ahead and stop sharing and hand it back to you guys.
Awesome. Thanks. If anybody wants to ask any questions too for JC, just throw it in the chat, throw your email in there. We'll make sure to add you to the distribution list. David.
All right, let's talk about some additional things that have been going on in the market. Just for clarification too, this is not meant to replace the stats that were mentioned at the beginning of our meeting today. This is a complement to that. So just some additional ammo to give you based on what's actually happening right now too. So I like to focus on days on market first. And if we look at January, across the Puget Sound region, we target primarily 8 counties in the Puget Sound region. This is a really important month to look at these numbers. Because if we look at the stats that all the other agents are looking at in the market, it looked like days on market went up by 11 days to 65 days on market for closed transactions, which they did technically. But what we want to look at is what's happening now. And what's happening now is the days on market has actually dropped by 10 days. So let me explain that for a second. When TrendGraphics, InfoSparse, and other stats calculators calculate days on market, they calculate it based on the date that the transaction closed. But the transaction went pending usually like a month earlier, plus or minus. And so that tells us when the activity actually happened, is when it went pending. So the 65 days on market for January told us really what happened in December, typically the slowest month of the year. The 62 number, which shows that days on market is going down rapidly for the area, is based on transactions that went pending in January. And so we look at these trends, this will continue to go down. So while some agents out there are saying, hey, the market didn't look good for January, it actually was great for January compared to December, right? So then we look at the next one over, the percentage of listings that went pending in 7 days or less. We had nearly a third of all listings for last month go pending in 7 days or less, right? I know some of you didn't feel that way, didn't feel like it because you're probably the remainder, right? But almost a third went pending in 7 days or less. But the key thing that sellers need to know, as far as pricing specifically, to make sure they're pricing to sell, is that for those that did not go pending in that first 7 days, they went into a new statistical category of 90 days on market. So the overall market was 62 days on market, but if you didn't sell in that first week, then your category jumps to the 90 days on market on average. So this is why it's really important for sellers and for you to have conversation with your sellers that, do you want to experiment? Do you want to push the pricing up and risk this, or do you need to get it sold quicker, right? Okay, so more on pending transactions here. So these are insights that actually NWMLS provides to us and tells us that in the same area, 27%, a little over a quarter of all listings had multiple offers last month. So not bad for January. And what this tells us too is that in our whole area, spring market hits earlier than it used to. Spring is starting in January, right? It's freezing cold, but our spring market, as far as the spike of our market, starts in January. And what that also means too is these last 3 or 4 years, we've been seeing it taper off earlier than usual too. We used to call it just the summer slows back in the day, that as we kind of would get into about midsummer, things would slow down a little bit. We've seen that slowdown occur a little bit earlier because the market picks up a little bit earlier. So if you've got a seller that's trying to time the market and figure out, do I sell now or do I wait until middle or end of spring? Actually, right now is a great time in most areas for sellers to sell if they're looking at maximizing their profit and minimizing the days on market, right? So last month we also saw 8% had an escalation addendum. That just means they went under contract with an escalation addendum. There were probably a bit more that actually started with the escalation addendum and then got dropped off during negotiations. And then 61% with an inspection addendum. That's about seems about right for the area. About 6 out of 10 had an inspection contingency. And then a little over 3/4, 78%, had a financing addendum. Pretty common for this time of year. That number, that last number, the financing addendum, typically goes down a little bit as we move into the spring. That's a combination of two things. Partially cash buyers, more cash buyers coming into the market during the springtime, but also too, as the market gets more competitive, you'll see a small handful of buyers that might be also waiving the financing contingency, even if they're getting financing. And then the last one here is, if we back up to that last one, there's a 99% average pending price to list price ratio. I know that might feel surprising to some of you, especially if you're in some of the outlying areas, but we're very close to the list price as far as what the average transactions going pending at. And so the message to a seller on this too is, if they're holding the price, they're like, well, if a buyer wants to pay 5% less, they'll put in an offer for 5% less. Well, maybe not, because maybe buyers are just passing it up and saying, well, let's just go look at something else instead. When you look at the average pending price to list price ratio, right, there aren't a whole lot that are going pending way below asking price. Right? Some are going over, some are going well under, but they're hovering around list price as far as the average pending price to list price ratio. All right, let's look at terminated transactions next. So I like to track the ratio of transactions that were terminated compared to the ones that went pending. So we look at single family homes in the same Puget Sound region, 8 counties. And what we're showing here, and this may feel high to some of you, 20%, last month, 20% of pending transactions in January were ultimately terminated. Didn't close, fell out of contract. 1 out of 5. So there are two things driving this. Number one is, you'll notice I marked the winter and spring. Winter, we tend to have a higher number of transactions that don't close than in the spring. There are different expectations in the winter. Buyers might get more aggressive. They might be more strict in terms of what they're looking for, and buyers and sellers don't come to an agreement maybe on inspection negotiations or other things. Right? Spring, that tends to be lower percentage tend to terminate, because we also have more during the spring where all contingencies are waived as well too, fewer contingencies. So this is meant to help you forecast. Because there were days when we would say, oh, my forecast is 9 out of 10 transactions that go under contract will close. We're in a different market right now. 1 out of 5 on average isn't closing, right? And then if you look at the average days on market for those ones that were terminated, if we take that 20% that terminated and take just the days on market for those, it's 97 days. And so this is really important messaging to sellers, especially, that the longer your property stays on the market, the higher the likelihood is that eventually the transaction will fall apart, right? This really supports the theory that there's a stigma that gets attached to properties that sit on the market for a long time. And so this is important messaging for a seller, right? And also for a buyer as well too, in their expectations, if you're putting in an offer on a property that's been on the market for a long time. Right? Make sure they have the right expectations too. Right? Okay, this is the time of year where I like to talk about median price a little bit because we hit the month, which is January, which typically has the lowest median price of the year for pretty much every county. And that represents December numbers, essentially. So December pendings equals median price for closed in January. And it makes it look like here, like prices actually went down. And not to say that prices in some areas didn't go down, they may have. But what we have is we have a shift in the buying in the market. So what happens is we move into the winter, the buying shifts down to the lower price points where we have more sales at the lower price points than the higher price points. This causes the median price to go down during that same period. Then in around January, some of the higher end, the luxury buyers, come out for a few months and they start pushing that up by buying some of the higher priced homes on the market. Now, they're not pushing prices up necessarily. It's just that we have a little bit of a pendulum swing more towards the center in terms of the higher end homes being purchased compared to the lower end homes being purchased. This causes median prices to go up, regardless of whether pricing in the market is actually going up. Now, usually as we go here, this time of year, this is when we actually have appreciation too. So we actually see a bit of a spike in median price, which includes both the actual market gains in value plus the swing of higher end homes being purchased more than they were during the early winter. And so what we can expect, because we saw 665,000 for these 8 counties was the median price for January, which represents what happens in December. And so people need to know if a seller's like, oh, I don't want to be putting my house in the market at the bottom. It's not the bottom. We passed that. We passed it a month ago. January was strong, and we're going to see median price jump up, probably similar to where it did last year, somewhere around 700,000 for the whole area. And then it'll go up again in March and again in April. Right? And so if a seller's looking to time the market, they're already at the right time right now. Right? The market is actually shifting where more buyers have come out. All right. Let's hit the next one. Actually, that was it.
All done?
All done. Yep, that was the last
Great
one.
information as always. I mean, it's so important to understand all of this as an agent, right? To know, to really be the expert in the market. We talk about it all the time, but that way you can know what to say to your buyers and sellers.
Especially if you're competing and for a listing, for example, and you're countering what another agent might be saying, but you're giving the real information that makes sense to a seller right now today.
And you have the data to back it up, right?
Yep.
Yeah, love it. Awesome. Thanks so much, David. All right. Well, I don't know if everybody knows, but we have some new forms. And so I know I, for one, am very excited that Janine is going to talk to us about these because, again, we need to know them. I cannot reiterate that enough. So, welcome, Janine. Thank you for being here as always and teaching us.
Thank you. Haley, are you able to share with me so I can click through as need be?
I think so.
Let me get that first. So this first form gives you the outline of what forms are being revised. So they are currently available as samples only in a red line or blue line, and then of course a complete sample. Perfect, thank you. And so you can go and read through them, get to know them a little bit, see the nuances, but I'm going to go through each of the changes here today. We've got the financing, we've got inspection, optional clause, we've got 41C compensation to buyer from seller, which I'm going to really touch home on, 22B home sale contingency, 22VV, if you're not using the homeowner's insurance form, this is a great time to learn it, ask questions, and start utilizing it at a very consistent level. A little bit changes to the purchase and sale agreement, the listing agreements and addendums, and of course, then some of the rental, the 68, not the 65A or B. Let's see here. Maybe, how do I click through? I don't actually know how when it's not mine.
Can you just click on the screen itself?
I've tried. It's not going anywhere. Click to start. Let's try it again. Nope. Oh, there it
Oh,
goes.
oh.
Perfect. 22A, paragraph 1 for paragraph 4 removes the provision that the financing contingency survives the closing date. This is actually a very big change because a lot of times lenders are still working through the issues with the buyers about are they able to get financing or not. And if you don't close on the closing date, but they get the denial letter 2 days later, that's what we call surviving the closing date. So that is going away as of February 28th. So the buyer must provide a notice of termination by the closing date if the buyer is terminating due to the inability to obtain the financing. So this now has to be done prior to closing, not after closing. Paragraph 4 will require the buyer to provide written confirmation from the lender regarding the loan application no later than 20 days after providing the termination for the earnest money to be refunded to the buyer. So that's another big change that is coming. So we need to really be paying attention to our timelines to make sure that we're not missing those. If you're using a transaction coordinator, make sure they understand the changes in the forms. I highly recommend, especially some of these big changes, you guys are getting in front of anybody you work with, meaning your team, and going through these changes to make sure that you understand what that really is going to do and implicate for your buyer moving forward. Paragraph 1B, waiver of financing contingency. It adds an option for the buyer to identify the lender that will finance the buyer's purchase. So the lender that's identified in that pre-approval letter. If the buyer changes the identity lender without seller's prior written consent, the buyer waives the financing contingency. Again, this is huge. We've been able to always utilize those 5-day rules, which we still have, in order to change the lender. But if you're going to be sending pre-approval letters, you are identifying who that lender is. And that lender can't change without seller's written consent. So remember, there's a couple of things in regards to what we are required to send with our offers. Never has there ever been a requirement that you have to send pre-approval letter or evidence of funds. As a listing broker, that's something that we might want to know and have in front of us because that will help our seller make an informed decision. Do we want to move forward with this buyer? So get to know these changes in 22A because that is a big one. If the buyer does not provide the name of the lender, then this provision will not apply. So if you don't provide the name, it doesn't exist as being identified. It's not. Oh, there it goes. Paragraph 4, inspection report for 22A clarifies the timing for the buyers to provide the inspection report. That's not part of 22A. I don't know why that. Did I go too far? I went too far. Thank you. Paragraph 1 clarifies the buyer may engage specialists, so clarifying that. It's always been that way for quite some time now, to conduct additional inspections during their original inspection period. So if you've got a 5-day, a 7-day, a 10-day, you can have specialists engaging in all of those days. Just make sure, one, you have to have the appointments, and seller can't really deny those appointments if they agree to a 35 as part of one of their addendums and contingencies in the purchase and sale agreement. So it doesn't have to be done just during the additional inspections. It's been this way for some time. It was just never very clear. In regards to sewer inspections, paragraph 1A, if it's an OSS on-site sewer, the inspection of this provision will be limited to the line connecting the dwelling to the OSS. So note that inspections for the OSS systems are not covered by Form 35. Utilize one of the septic forms. Remember, 22S is not the only one for all septic systems. They are going to be county specified. 22S, Snohomish County, yes. King County, 22S-King, that is going to be for King County. So look for Thurston County and Kitsap and all of those if you're working outside of the 3 Tri-County area. Paragraph 4 clarifies that if requesting repairs or modifications, the buyer may describe the related issues and provide contractor bids. Again, something that we've been allowed to do for a very long time, never been clear. One thing I do recommend if you're going to use bids, I don't like to have photos attached to those bids that even come from the contractor that has done the bid, unless it's very clear that they're coming from the contractor and not an inspector. Photos are some things that can get blurred a little bit. I don't want any gray lines and getting our buyers into some trouble. Even if the seller has not requested the inspection report, attached bids for your 35R have always been for a very, very long time, not part of the inspection and allowed. They're just now clarifying the language. See if I can get through this. I can't get it to move. Thank you. Paragraph 4 clarifies the timing of the buyer to provide the inspection reports if the seller requests it. So that's at 35C. If the seller requests a copy prior to providing 35R, then the buyer will need to send also the whatever the seller is requesting in their 35C. Part of it, all of it, additional inspections. Paragraph 5, additional inspections clarifies that the additional time to perform inspections or evaluations extends the inspection period and runs from the buyer's notice of additional inspections, is not an extension from the end of the original inspection period. That just means that when you give notice that you're going to utilize the buyer's right for those 5 days, that you're not asking for anything else. You're just notifying the seller that's one 35R. You're going to check that box, and that 35R is done. Your new 35R, when you finally ask for requests or modifications, will be a separate 35R. So there could easily be two in any of your transaction folders. The seller requesting inspection report using 35C has been revised to clarify the timing for the buyer's delivery. So that's just kind of reiterating what I just said. If they're asking for it prior to you serving a 35R that's asking for items to be done, minus, of course, the additional inspections disclosure, 35C will take care of that. If you haven't provided the 35R yet, then provide the 35R with whatever the seller is requesting. The optional clause addendum, that one reason I always use 22D optional clause addendum was paragraph 1, where it says that it is required for the buyer to verify any information that has been given to them, whether it's from you as a broker, whether it's from tax records. They are now moving that into paragraph 10, into specific term. I'll get that one to you, but it is moving to the purchase and sale agreement and being taken off the optional clause addendum. Paragraph 10 has been revised to clarify for home warranty if that box is checked, but the home warranty information is not completed, the parties waive ordering a home warranty policy. So make sure you're filling out all of that information or they will not actually get a home warranty. Can anybody buy a home warranty after closing or right before closing? Absolutely. This is just if one party is specifically paying for this. And remember, as we are selling our own properties, our personal properties that we own, if I were to put my house on the market, I am required by our E&O carrier that I have to provide in writing that I will give them and pay for a home warranty. That is one of the conditions that we are bound by in order to have coverage on that particular transaction. So making sure that that paragraph now is very important for you to remember if you're selling your own personal property to somebody else and not as a dual agent. That is against our policy. 41C. 41C is that little box at the end of your compensation paragraph in your purchase and sale agreement. It's a very important little box, and now it comes and has come with, over the last year, 41C. They have finally revised it to clarify that the credit is seller credit to the buyer. That is very important for us being taxpayers as 1099s. It says that the seller is giving the credit, not me as a buyer broker, okay? So if your compensation is lower than what the seller's offering to pay, that means you are 100% checking that box. You're adding 41C in, so that credit is a tax ramification to the seller, not to you. Do your best not to use a Form 34 to give your money to a buyer. Don't monkey around with compensation. You know what your set amount is. Don't let it change where you're going to up it and then say, oh, I will give you a credit now, buyer. Let the seller take the tax ramifications. So making sure that you are paying attention to this, because taxes in Washington aren't fun right now, and they're only going to get worse. They've clarified it to be a fixed dollar amount or percentage amount. It clarifies that the seller's credit to be credited to the buyer's obligations at closing, and notes that there may be other credits such as the financing 22A, inspection 35R or 34. It also clarifies that the seller's credit to the buyer expressed, I guess, as a dollar or percentage are capped based on the seller's offer of buyer brokerage compensation on paragraph 1 of the purchase sale agreement unless otherwise agreed. 22B home sale contingency, paragraph 1A. It adds an option to specify a cap on the listing price for the buyer's property. If the list price for the buyer's property exceeds that specified amount at any time, all of the buyer's contingencies will be waived and the closing date will be 30 days from the waiver. So there's already, again, we don't have a closing date when we have a 22B in play. In that line where it asks for the closing date, you simply put C form 22B, and it will be either clarified that it will close 3 days later or that it will close 30 days later if the buyer has waived based on this provision. Paragraph 5 clarifies that the buyer may not change the closing date, whether extending it or shortening it, for the sale of the buyer's property without seller's written consent. And of course, anytime you need seller's written consent, we have forms for that. 22VV. Again, this is a form I highly recommend all buyer brokers to use. And quite honestly, as a listing broker, this actually is a really good protection also for your seller. 22VV is the form we use to confirm a contingency based on a buyer ordering their homeowner's insurance binder, which they need to do if they're getting a loan. It's a legal requirement for the lender. It states that if the percentage of the amount for deductibles too high or the premiums are too high, that a buyer has an option to get out of the property. Now, why does this benefit the seller? Because they have to do this within a certain amount of time. Whereas if you don't have this form, they can go all the way closer to closing. And if they're unable to get homeowners insurance because of location, because of fire issues, mudslides, flooding, whatever have you, and they're getting closer to closing, you've just now been off the property for this long. This way, if you have this as a listing broker, as this is part for your seller, you explain this to them, it makes the buyer put their feet to the fire to get this binder done sooner than later and get in or out, and you've only been off the market for a few days. So to require the buyer, if the buyer terminates based on this contingency, deliver a letter from the insurance broker or the insurance company showing the date the buyer made application. Because in the contract, they have to make application within, I want to say it's 5 days of mutual acceptance. And they're either unable to get coverage or premium or deductible that exceeds the amount that is on the form. The form has defaults. Again, those defaults are quite low in my eyes, but it depends on the situation. So making sure that you're adjusting that based on who you're representing. Buyer might want to stay with the defaults. Seller, you might want to increase those. The letter may be an email or another documentation showing the date submitted the request. So it doesn't have to be an exact form like a lender denial letter for financing. Request for insurance broker or company's response with information demonstrating the insurance would not meet the terms required. The revision requires the buyer to provide the written confirmation no later than 5 days after timely providing the notice of termination. Buyer's notice of termination can be used on Form 90VV, Victor, clarifies the written confirmation from the insurance company regarding the buyer's application, needs to be provided to the seller timely after the buyer's notice of termination for the earnest money, then it will be refunded to the buyer. The changes in the purchase and sale agreements, 2021, 23, 25, 28, depending on what type of property you have, residential, vacant land, multifamily, condominium, manufactured home on leased land. Remember, manufactured home on owned land is a 21 and not a 23. The PSA has been revised for the following terms. General term U clarifies that the seller offers or pays buyer brokerage compensation stated on specific term A and B is a percentage of the purchase and sale agreement unless otherwise specified. So they're just clarifying that it's automatically a percentage unless you specify differently. For a while, there was these rumors going around that when we first made these changes to the form, that we had to have it in dollar amount. I don't know whoever started that rumor. It wasn't one of us, but it was out there in our industry. And of course, showing up on all Instagrams, Facebooks, talks, everything that social media, talking about in groups. So remember, whatever the seller's offering is it's already signified as a percentage or dollar amount. When you have your buyer broker service agreement, you're saying whatever that is. So 17B has to match exactly what's on your purchase and sale agreement. Don't try to figure out a dollar figure when you already have a percentage. Just put the percentage in. The general term X, property disclosure disclaimer, adds the advisory language from the 22D. So this is the new one that they've added to the purchase and sale agreement, for the buyer to verify the lot, the square footage, boundaries, encroachments to the buyer's satisfaction, and clarify that the brokers are making no representations about this. So this is not a contingency. And again, it was never a contingency on 22D, but now it's just specified in the purchase and sale agreement. So they've just moved it from one form to another. General Z, new, this is brand new, real estate reporting, financial crimes enforcement, adds a new disclosure known as FECEN starting March 1st of this year. Closing agents, your escrow closers, involved in the residential real estate closing and settlement will be required to submit reports to FECEN for certain non-finance transfers of residential real estate to legal entities or trusts. This report is required. This reporting requirement is to be a safeguard for the U.S. financial systems, such as money laundering, terrorists. The reporting requires previously limited to the sale of the properties in certain geographical locations. They've taken that part out. March 1st will be applied to all qualifying transfers regardless of geographical locations. It will notify the buyers and sellers at the closing date or require them to provide certain documentation. And there is, if you want more information, you're welcome to grab that. There's a QR code to take you straight to that. Grab your cameras, take a photo before Haley goes to the next slide. Listing agreements have changed as followed. Paragraph 5, the list date, adds a definition of photographs to reflect the wide range of visual depictions of the property that a seller or listing firm may include with a listing. Photographs, images, videos, tours, drawings, rendering, sketches, floor plans. Paragraph 12, seller warranty and representations, clarify that the seller's representation about the property information, any information provided in the supplemental documentations, for example, building green, accessibility, describes features or conditions of the property. So minor changes there. The lease 68 has been revised to clarify the lease. If it's more than 1 year, you have to have it notarized, which it's always been that way, it's just clarifying it. Paragraph 1A removes the leaseor's acknowledgement regarding limited rights to remove tenants if the lease continues as a month-to-month. Paragraph 3A clarifies the amount described as the base rent. 3B clarifies the lessor may later notify the tenant of a different address for delivery of rent money. Paragraph 4 clarifies that the tenant payment of utilities is additional rent. By the way, in regards to if anybody does rental listings, completely allowed. Or if you've got the tenant looking for listed leases, completely allowed. We are not allowed to be property managers. We don't have errors and omissions coverage for that. Ben does not allow it. And if those rent monies are being delivered to a different address, it cannot be to the office, ever. If you have your own rental properties, all monies from your tenants have to go to your physical address for home, a P.O. box. It cannot come to the office. So I just want to make sure that's very clear. Paragraph 6 adds late fees to examples of tenants' obligations for which the deposit is security. And 9 removes the non-sufficient check charges from the 14-day notice to pay rent or vacate provision. 11 includes a provision for the tenant to select if they do not require emotional support, service, or therapy animals and have not requested a reasonable accommodations. The pet agreement in 65B is only for the use for pets and may not be used if the animal is a support or service animal. As those animals are not pets, the lessor may not charge extra for support or service animals. Tenant is responsible for welfare and behavior of any animal. 12 clarifies that the tenant is not a beneficiary of the insurance maintained by the lessor. And 15 includes a statement that the hot water heater may not be set higher than 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and the tenant's confirmation of the opportunity to inspect the hot water heater and confirm that it has not been set higher. Move in, move out addendums, 65A, have been revised to include a new prompt that the amount is deducted for damages or unpaid utilities. The lessor is attached related invoices, bills, estimates, and bids. And finally, notice of rent and fee increase 68I, which is a new form based on the RCW, requires specific statutory language for lesser notices to the tenant of rent and fee increases for residential lease properties. New form will include the statutory notice. It will set caps on rental increase unless landlord qualifies as an exemption. The notice must be provided at least 90 days prior to an increase unless more notice is required by local municipalities. And I think, and Form 11, the referral form, adds a reference in regards to lessor tenants to clarify the form may be used for rental referrals as well, which is going to be great for helping with payments for the MCA. Because a lot of times when you might have the tenant, you're trying to figure out how you're going to get paid. One company mails a check to our company, we then give it to you. This is a great way because they do all the paperwork. So you're just kind of getting them to the property. The representation for the landlord usually says, well, the landlord will take care of all the paperwork. We'll pay you X number of dollars, which is going to now become a referral. And this will help us be able to figure out who we give the money to when the checks come in. And again, the samples are available, red line, blue line, depending on which you can read better. Note, do not use the sample. So there's a full version of the samples without red lines or blue lines, so you can see what it looks like, but those red line, blue lines really do help. I recommend find the red line, the blue line, take the sample, highlight what you see is different based on those crossouts or delineations or additions, and start to learn those new areas of those new forms. And they'll be available in Transaction Desk on the 24th of February. And then they will take away the old forms. And with that being said, if you do transaction templates and you've got purchase and sale, listing ones, you're going to have to revamp all of those. When we change forms in the Northwest MLS, they do not get rid of your templates or update those templates. So know that on the 24th, set your calendar. Any templates you have need to be redone. And if you want to take a forms revision class with the Northwest MLS with clock hours at $25 plus tax, you get 3 clock hours by legal counsel Jeannie from the Northwest MLS. Scan that little barcode, and that should take you to a class you can register for and take, which is via Zoom. Questions?
I
have a question.
in the chat as well.
Okay. I can't
On
get to the
the
chat.
rental increases, how does that apply to manufactured homes on leased land when I know they can only raise it 5% while they're there, but once they sell, what's a landlord allowed or the property owner allowed to do as far as increasing that rent?
Those are specific and not in regards to Form 68, which is where those forms live. That's if your person living in the manufactured home is renting the actual manufactured home, not the owner living on leased land.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go through the questions in the chat for you. The
Great.
first one is from Tom Ross. What happens if you provide multiple pre-approval letters?
That hasn't been clarified. Great question.
Okay. Trevor, do we still have 5 days to switch lender without seller permission?
Yes.
Okay, and if anybody wants to add any further questions about this, then they can unmute. Nick, what about offering home warranty on a rental property?
I don't know why you would do that unless the homeowner wants the home warranty on their property that they own in case something happens to appliances, but that's going to be based on the homeowner, not the tenant.
Can I clarify my question there? It's if it's my own rental property, I as the listing agent and owner of the property, am I obligated to offer a warranty if it's my personal rental or investment?
Got it. No, that is only if you are selling the property to a new homeowner.
But if I'm selling it as like a duplex, for example, and somebody might move in and live there, or somebody might buy it as a rental,
Re-rent it out.
And I don't know, right? So what's best
So-
practice then?
So there's not that actually that is an insurance requirement that if you're physically selling the property, whoever's buying it, you have to offer them a home warranty, whether or not they're going to inherit the tenant or not.
Okay, so if it's my property I'm selling, even if it's a rental, I still am offering a home warranty.
Correct.
Okay, Thank you.
And we have to offer that in writing. If the buyer says, I don't want it, then you don't have to provide it, but make sure that's somehow in writing, that we can make sure that if we have to give that information to our E&O carrier, it's readily available.
Okay. Does that apply if we're selling properties, we are members of the owning LLC?
Yes.
And then the last one, does home warranty apply for multifamily as well, or just for your own house?
If you own the property and you're selling it, you have to apply it. And now, could we maybe get a exclusion for that being multifamily potentially? But that question goes to either your designated broker who comes to me, or you come to me directly and I reach out to our carrier.
Well, this one is if you sell, let's say, my 6-unit complex, and if I'm selling my own, am I forced to offer home warranty? That's also a question.
Again, it was something I would have to take to the carrier, because that's just going to be a little bit of a nuance. So come to me first.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome.
Quick question to me, clarifying. Sorry, does the home warranty, that's completely separate from a builder's warranty? That wouldn't count, right?
That is correct. And one of the other stipulations of having E&O carrier coverage is we've also not constructed the property ourselves. So we cannot be the builder. We will not have E&O coverage. So if we need guidance from our carrier, need to come to me first before you list the property. If you have somebody else list it, that situation goes away.
I saw a hand.
But if you're providing a warranty based on new construction, that will suffice to answer your question.
Anybody else have questions? Going once. All right. Well, thank you, Janine, for diving into all of that. Again, when did the new forms take place, or the changes?
They come out on the 24th of February into Transaction Desk.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for being here, and thanks for everybody for contributing, especially Janine with all the form updates. Pay attention to your market centers for the contract classes where your DBs will dive into the forms even further. So be sure to attend all those so we understand them. Live, eat, sleep, breathe them. Awesome.
And going to the Northwest MLS class taught by the people who change the forms, you get clock hours. I highly recommend it as well. Take it as many times as you can, because you will get different perspectives every time you hear it.
Yeah. And may think of new questions, and yeah, awesome. All right. Well, thanks everybody. We'll leave this up for a second if you want to read it and check it out and see when the classes are. Otherwise, have a good day.